Yorgo, nice to meet you, my friend.
Nice to meet you, Sasha.
Hello, everyone. We are broadcasting now, and we just leave a couple of minutes for people to join.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's energy talk on green hydrogen developments in Georgia and Ukraine. We really appreciate your participation and support during these difficult times when we had to move all of our events online. We're doing a series of energy talks during December, and we will continue them during first quarter of 2021. So if you have an idea for another great energy talk, please feel free to reach out. We will be delighted to hear your thoughts, and maybe you can become part of the upcoming energy talk. Before we get started, I would like to touch upon a few housekeeping rules. Excuse me, so that you know how to participate in today's session. So during the webinar, at any time, you will be able to submit your questions to our speakers. Please use the Q&A button at the control panel to submit your questions. This is going to be quite interactive experience. So apart from submitting your questions, you can also comment on the questions submitted by other participants, and you can also upvote those questions, meaning that you're letting us know that you approve of that question and you want us to address it verbally. And our speakers will take as many questions as they can at the end of the session during the Q&A. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, our moderator, Yorgo Shatsimarkakis, Secretary General at Hydrogen Europe, Alexander Repkin, President at Ukraine Hydrogen Council, David Managadze, Associate Director at EBRD, and Daniel Potash, Specialist Leader at Deloitte. I'm taking this chance. I would like to thank all of our knowledge partners and supporters. First of all, our knowledge partner, Hydrogen Europe, and our supporting associations, Ukrainian Hydrogen Council, the European Ukrainian Energy Agency, and Eurosolar Georgia. Huge thanks to our media partners for disseminating information about this webinar. Interfax Ukraine, Batteries International, H2 International, and Work News. Right, Yorgo, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Inessa, and thanks for this excellent opportunity to elaborate on one of the maybe most interesting topics at the moment, not only in the European Union, but worldwide when it comes to future energy. Would like to remind you that the last G20 summit that took place in Saudi Arabia had in its conclusions the vision of green oil. And the host, Saudi Arabia, described green oil as renewably or zero carbon produced hydrogen mixed with biogenic CO2. And this would be the biggest opportunity for this country. And the G20 colleagues applauded that. So that's good. That's good news. I would like to bring you a little bit into the general situation. I would like to share my screen here. Yeah, is that possible? Can you make me a host? Inessa?
You don't have to be a host. Actually, you can just press green share screen button at the bottom of the control panel.
I did.
Yep.
No, it doesn't show me my screen. I don't know why.
Can you try again?
I'll try again. Here.
Yep.
Now you should see it. No. Okay. Doesn't matter. I tried one last time. If it doesn't work, it doesn't.
I guess I can help.
Yeah, if you can, Vika, if you can do it, it would be great.
No, I maybe made an update. Yeah, maybe Vera can upload this presentation. What happens in the European Union at the moment, and what we see also on a global scale, is of course how to create a technology that can help also in the so-called European Green Deal to be successful. My name is Yorgos Chatzimarkakis. I'm Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe, which is the European Association on hydrogen technologies, but the whole value chain and also the derivatives when it comes to methanol or ammonia. If you go to the next slide, the historical question, and I alluded already to the G20 summit, is who will be the hydrogen superpower? And here the journalist just restricted it to the EU or China. I would say after the election of Joe Biden, who has appointed immediately a climate expert, Mr. Kerry, who's a well-known political personality, I think the race will be between at least one other partner, which is the US. But that's the question. The question is that hydrogen becomes more and more a geostrategic issue, and who will make the race? Next slide, please. The Europeans are quite well prepared, at least at the moment. This is a paper that we issued a year ago. It's called 2x40 gigawatt initiative. So what we did a year ago, and I will share with you very transparently that because I know that we will see the capacity of electrolyzer producers later on, that our own members who produce electrolyzers were a little bit, let me say, overwhelmed. So they thought, wow, 40 gigawatt in Europe, capacity until 2030, that's a lot. And another 40 in the neighboring regions. I'm very happy to see Alexander Ryebkin here, who will be the follow-up speaker, who is part of this neighborhood, and Georgia is as well, because it's an associated country. So the second 40 gigawatt will be scaled up in the neighborhood. So Northern Africa, MENA region, but especially Ukraine, and why not Georgia? And that's why I'm very happy to have also this Georgian perspective here in this seminar. It was overwhelming, but it was politically adopted. And then later on, it was adopted on highest level at the EU. And next slide, please. It was enshrined in the strategy. At 8th of July, the European Commission came up with the presentation of the hydrogen strategy, where these 2x40 gigawatt are enshrined as a target. We will see this also in later presentations. At the same time, the energy system integration package was for the first time presented, which is the coupling of gas and power sector. If you have more renewables, you have intermittency, you have grid issues, and especially if you have the bulk of renewables that the European Union wants to integrate into their system, the power grid is definitely too small, is not enough. That's why using gas grid for the gaseous electricity, if you wish, which is hydrogen, renewably produced, that's the aim of this energy system integration package. And the third element was, and you see it here in my back, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. So basically an initiative that aims at accompanying this process, especially with industries that need to implement this. Next slide. So this historical day for us has caused some historical momentum. In the meanwhile, many countries, many European member states have issued their hydrogen strategies. Here we see only Germany and France, who together have earmarked 60 billion euro for hydrogen projects in the next 10 years to come. So exactly in that time frame. All in all, the big European member states have issued 35 billion already, and there are different tools how they can bring it into the projects. But that's a historical momentum that we need to seize. Next slide, please. It has also influenced very much the summit. At the moment, European leaders are in Brussels, or partly they are hybridly here or not. They're coming together for their summit, and hydrogen has that level. Hydrogen has become an issue on that summit level, especially French President Macron and the German Chancellor Merkel, both very acquainted in having Franco-German projects, have during their last big Franco-German summit have talked nearly 2 hours about hydrogen only and how to create a gigafactory for electrolyzers. So that's basically the strategic issue. Next slide, please. Yeah, and in order to get there, we need financial engineering because this systemic change is not, happening overnight and is not happening for free. And here I'm very happy to listen later on to experts on financing and funding to see how we can do this financial engineering. We have at our hands different tools, and it's of utmost importance now to integrate Ukraine, but also Georgia as partners into this financial engineering, because Europe will need much more hydrogen than it can produce. I said that already in the beginning, that neighboring countries and regions play a very important role. Next slide, please. And then we are at the end. We will try to also connect the gas pipeline. These are the gray lines that you see here with the mobility infrastructure. We will call them clean hydrogen corridors, where you then can go from east to west, from north to south, using hydrogen trucks or also light duty vehicles and to carry your freight. And we are currently working with the OEMs that started hydrogen production. That's Iveco from Italy and Volvo and Daimler from Sweden and Germany. And most probably this red line there from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean will be the first testing corridor to see how this works. But why not? I don't exclude, and you see there is a lot of east-west. We need Ukrainian and Georgian hydrogen as well to feed these corridors. Next slide. Brings me to the end of this short presentation, and to come to my good friend, Alexander Sasha Ryebkin, who is the president of the Hydrogen Council and also Mr. Hydrogen in the Ukrainian government, because the government has given him the role of the hydrogen coordinator. He plays this role very, very well. Hydrogen has become also one of the prime issues when it comes to bilateral talks between the EU and Ukrainian government. I'm happy to see that all these initiatives that we took some years ago now enter into a phase of more maturity and starting implementation. Sasha, you have the floor.
Jorgo, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased for such warm presentation of me, Jorgo, and I'm really want to say that we start to cooperate with you personally about 3 years ago, and some small figures before my presentation, which will satisfy you, I think, very much, and you will smile, because now will be your best how it is part of discussion. It's 4 years ago I say that. So yesterday and the day before yesterday there was first energy day between Germany and Ukraine, and during this energy day our prime minister announcement that in 6 months we will have a roadmap for hydrogen on a national level. Yorgo, it's a victory. I really think that part of this also not only Ukrainian victory, it's victory of Hydrogen Europe, because everything which we did it together and in very, very close cooperation in everything. And now we can find that the first governor of our country put on the table topic with hydrogen. And Time 40 initiative also was mentioned during his speech. And now cooperation between Ukraine and Germany will be concentrated on particular projects in hydrogen. And of course, our projects and portfolio will be also on the table, and we discussed it yesterday. So we have a lot of things to do. And now I want to come to my presentation. So next slide, please. What I want to say, that Ukrainian Hydrogen Council was the first member of Hydrogen Europe from non-European Union country. And I think this membership was a historical moment for Ukraine and for hydrogen development, hydrogen in Ukraine, because if we didn't have such supporter or in the European Union, I think it will be definitely very hard to move such a great idea in the whole country, because hydrogen technology allows us to change the economy model of any country. And for Ukraine, it's crucial because the first thing is energy security and energy independence. So relationship, during this period, we set the relationship with such leader of hydrogen world as Early Kid, then S-Chance, Hexagon, FCH, Zephyr, High Evolution, Bloomberg, National Academy of Science, State Agency of Energy in Ukraine, and Committee of Fuel and Energy in our Verkhovna Rada. And of course, different other organizations now become members of Hydrogen Europe. And when we start to work on the hydrogen strategy, we concentrate on our basement a lot of representatives from different businesses, science, and national governmental organization. Next slide. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Yeah. The main goals also, sorry, can you back one? Okay, let it be. Yes, the main goals of Ukraine Hydrogen Council. We see some technical problems. This I already commented. Please, next slide. Yes, we want to be some kind of a bridge to European hydrogen technology, to European Hydrogen Association, and we definitely make a very skillful dialogue between our association and between Hydrogen Society in Ukraine and the European Union. Why European Union? Because I really hope and I really think that European continent will play a leading role in transferring the whole world into hydrogen technologies. And I think our targets and the European Green Deal is very, very powerful argument for this. And we are really happy that Hydrogen Europe is maybe a main policymaker in this field, and cooperation between our organization is very important. So I hope our Georgian partner also will take it to consideration, and will try to find a way how to cooperate with Hydrogen Europe. So make renewable hydrogen, and our next target is make renewable and hydrogen energy technologies accessible in the public by supporting energy conservation and energy decentralization program. So we can put hydrogen definitely in all strategic spheres of our economy of our country, and as well as it could be implemented for any country in the world. So modernization of a legal base of Ukraine and integration of legislative norm with international energy standards. In this case, it's also very important. We don't need to invent a wheel. We just need to check what program are already set in European Union, as we want to be a part of it. So we need to just transfer it to Ukraine and to put all standards which we need to make it happen. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. So this is the hydrogen chain. We definitely see that we want to produce hydrogen from renewable, make it with electrolysis, then storage, and using it for decarbonization of transport and distribution, and then we can use it in chemistry, metallurgical production, for fuel, in fuel station, for cars, and of course for our houses or housekeeping to produce electricity and heat. Next slide. So what is the background for Ukraine Hydrogen Council? As I said, that we don't need to invent a wheel. We just need to transfer and to check all European documents and all European strategies which we have now. I was very happy that I was in office of Hydrogen Europe on 8th of July when Yorgo made a presentation on a conference where Frank Timmermans presented European hydrogen strategy, and just need to take into consideration several documents and several main backbones for hydrogen strategy, which can be easily checked and adopted in Ukraine as well as in Georgia. So I think there is a very, very helpful situation that brightest minds already did, I think, the great part of a job. Next slide. Next slide, please. So here is, I think, the main features for Ukraine hydrogen strategy. Now I'm head of a group of experts in energy, in Ministry of Energy of Ukraine, and my main task is to make this strategy in terms which was mentioned by our Prime Minister. So we have only half a year. And our what is the key figures of strategy? Develop hydrogen in line with European Union ambition. So we already have a great support which was given us by European Union in advance. So we are part of one strategy, European hydrogen strategy. We part of German hydrogen strategy. We are part of 40 gigawatt green electrolyzer initiative. This is, I think, the great support in advance, and we need to use it. This privilege to go as quick as we can to be on the same page with the European countries who adopted their own national strategies. Identify logistic opportunities of Ukraine. So, of course, we speak about already existing transport route. We speak about our national pipeline, which I think in 5 years will be half empty, because the amount of natural gas which is transported from Russian Federation according to our contract will be decline, and we need to think what we will do with our infrastructure, and the best way is to reconstruct it for hydrogen, to make a national strategy and national plan, national projects which will support this movement. So leverage existing gas transport and infrastructure, as I already mentioned, foster domestic application in transport and heating. So this is also one part how we can be fully energy independent and energy self-balanced. Using this technology with hydrogen, we can provide fuel for trucks, cars, and as I mentioned, for houses to produce electricity and heat, and of course create economic opportunities. So we need to take the consideration that thinking about production of hydrogen, we support a lot of different branches of economy. It's like a relaunch of the whole sector when you try to make a new market. Next slide. So the main first step is identify the most relevant strategy elements, identify relevant stakeholders in industry and government, map relevant industries elements, run stakeholders workshop, and align goals, identify any issues and ranks target sector, and of course suggest initiative, initial strategy approach, and refine the targets stakeholder discussion. I think for Ukraine we already passed through all the stages, and Yorgo, I'm very pleased also say that first draft of roadmap I think will be next week, and make an announcement of this. We did it with in partnership with UNIS, and of course everything what we are speaking about with you. Next slide. So this is, I think, the main slide which I want to describe and which I want to comment. This is the first thing which allowed us to be a part of European hydrogen initiative. We did research which shows the potential of Ukraine in different kind of renewables. As the main key point of European Green Deal is to produce hydrogen from renewables, we make a calculation and find out that Ukraine, even with everything we built in renewables, still has the second in Europe potential in renewables in wind. also we are in 10 with the potential of sun and the potential of biomass and small rivers gives us, I think, a very, very great advantage to show that Ukraine can become a real strong partner for European Union for production of green hydrogen and exporting it for the demand of European customer. Next slide. This is all these 6 kinds of renewable now joined together in one map, and you can see that southern part of Ukraine and central part is, I think, the most profitable and most interesting as a production of renewable and mainly from wind power station. And one more thing, Ukraine also was mentioned in European offshore energy wind strategy, and now we make several committees meeting with our legislative companies, international, who gives a report what we need to do to make it happen to build offshore wind in Ukraine, because now the situation is that we have a great potential, but we have no legislative basement to make it happen. And I think also up to the end of this week we will announce some conference from this point and show what we can do. Next slide. Next slide, please. And this slide, you can see, I think the most positive scenario for production of hydrogen, green hydrogen in Ukraine. And all this region, we can say that potential is great. And first region which we start to check and which we start to develop is Odessa region, which is on the border of European Union from the Romania side, and has connection with national gas pipeline and of course national already existing trade routes. So we can build infrastructure for hydrogen cars. We can use hydrogen cars not only to refuel, but also to make it to make service for these cars. And of course, we think about several IPCEIs, which are very important for European Union. And one of them we discussed with Yorgo, also how we can deliver Ukrainian green hydrogen to Italy using Trans-Adriatic pipeline going through Romania and Bulgaria. Next slide. So we take, I think, different, some key figures from the strategy of European Union, and we can say that our ambitious targets also to go, I want to say shoulder to shoulder with the European Union, but I think it's very optimistic. And nevertheless, just to keep in sight all European countries and not to lose from the sight European countries and European companies in this moment. And I think that we will manage it. So we see that production of electrolyzer going up in gigawatt scales. And I really believe that in 10 years, we will fully decarbonize biggest sector in Ukraine, as well as chemistry and production of steel. Next slide. Next slide, please. How can hydrogen be promoted? The production of clean hydrogen needs to be increased by clean, sustainable industrial value chain, of course. We should boost the demand for clean hydrogen coming from industrial applications and mobility technology. Clean hydrogen needs a supportive framework, well-functioning markets, and clean rules. This is, I think, the main figures. If business will definitely know what to do, it will go. And if the rule will not be changed, also the situation will be stable and encourage investment in hydrogen technologies. Promoting research, Europe we will secure cooperation opportunities with neighboring countries and regions of EU. So this is definitely a place for Ukraine and Georgia as well, as we are already in neighborhood policy. And of course, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance helps to build all projects and all initiatives on which we can join together investor and developer and make hydrogen technology real in our countries. Next slide. And thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Alexander. I think it's very impressive to see what is already happening in Ukraine and how Ukraine can fit into the ongoing European projects. And indeed, this what you just discussed, this IPSAI, I need to explain, IPSAI is an abbreviation for Important Project of Common European Interest. This is a tool that the Europeans might use to bring up important hydrogen projects. It allows, let me put it like that, to play China for a while, because you can waive harsh competition and state aid rules. And what you can do is you can fund up to 100%. And this might be an interesting tool, especially for the first 5 years that you described, Alexander, in your presentation, which is the upscale, the pure upscale. And it doesn't even make sense to talk about market incentives before we reach a certain level. And that has been described by the Commission with 1 million ton or 6 gigawatt. And then from then we can take it on to go for the next gigawatt until 40. Now let us take a perspective of a neighboring country, another neighboring country, which is Georgia. And we will take now two angles. One is by US-aid energy program, and the other one is by the EBRD. And it's, for me, fascinating and interesting to see how Georgia could fit into this approach to invite, so to say, the broader neighborhood to become part of this systemic change and the new system. And I'm pleased to welcome Daniel Potash, who is Chief of Party at the USAID Energy Program. I think, Daniel, you have plenty of experience with big renewable energy projects worldwide. And it's interesting to listen to you now, how you see this, your experience in the context of Georgia. Daniel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Yorgo. Inessa, are you going to be putting my slides up, or should I share my screen?
Can you do it? It would be great.
Yes, I can. Okay,
Perfect.
let's get my slides going here.
It works.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. So my name is Dan Potash. I was, until last Thursday, the Chief of Party of our USAID Energy Program, which came to a close on December 3rd. It was a 3-year program of technical assistance from US government to the government of Georgia and to private sector developers and investors renewable energy projects. And let me give you just a little bit about the context of this program. The idea was to help Georgia fulfill its obligations under the Association Agreement and the Energy Community Treaty to align its energy framework with Europe. And that alignment was mainly concerning open competitive energy markets and a dedication to clean energy and the protection of vulnerable customers and energy security. And none of this involved hydrogen, but hydrogen emerged as a topic of interest because of a couple of problems that we had in Georgia. And this presentation, I'll try to give you a flavor of what we looked at. The goal of this pre-feasibility study was not so much to answer, can hydrogen work, but really, will it definitely not work? It was looking at whether or not there are any deal killers in hydrogen that would make it completely unfeasible. So first we looked at, why would you in the first place consider hydrogen? And I'm going to show you why Georgia and Ukraine are perhaps the best countries in the region to supply Europe with hydrogen. I want to talk about Georgia's energy profile, which has a highly seasonal nature, and why hydrogen could be a problem solver for Georgia. And then we wanted to look at the technology, because my first question is, well, who are the equipment suppliers, and are they financeable, and does this technology really work? And then finally, money. How is this, what are the economics of this thing going to look like? And then what would be the next steps to move ahead? So first of all, what's the vibe? Where should you make hydrogen? If you're going to make hydrogen from green energy, from renewables, if you're going to make hydrogen from electricity, where should you do it? And so we looked at the price of electricity across Europe, and we see these different prices ranging from 35 euro cents. And my little pictures are covering Georgia and Ukraine, which is way over on the right-hand side of this graph. Georgia and Ukraine are offering the lowest prices of electricity in Europe and the neighboring region, below 5 euro cents per kilowatt hour. So that tells you that the first place that you should look as a place to make hydrogen is Georgia and Ukraine. And I'm very pleased that Alexander was able to give his presentation about the steps that they've gone through in Ukraine to look at hydrogen from a strategic and policy approach, because I think that Georgia can really build on that foundation that you've started there in terms of, well, for example, using the pipeline. I think that's very interesting, and we're going to be looking at that. But speaking of pipelines, we know that Europe has been looking at a hydrogen pipeline, well, a whole hydrogen ecosystem, and I think that one of the, well, not one, but many uses of hydrogen are going to be deployed, ranging from households to industries to transportation. And, the question is, can Georgia link up to this pipeline and then serve it? And there are a lot of questions about this. There are a lot of questions about the technology and the cost of pushing hydrogen a long distance. But I can definitely agree with what Yorgo and Alexander said about hydrogen being the storage and the smoother of the grid and the smoother of the pipeline system. I'll get into this a little bit more in depth, but I'll just say that electricity goes at 186,000 miles per second, and gas moves at 23 miles per hour. And so it's a lot easier to store gas than to store electricity. So hydrogen is the key for renewable energy storage. Now, what's going on in Georgia? Georgia has a 4,000 megawatt of installed capacity, and we have about a 2,000 megawatt peak. And that doesn't mean that we have a lot of electricity. It depends on what time of the year we're talking about. The 4,000 megawatt installed is mostly hydro, and we're getting that electricity mostly in, we're getting that electricity production mostly in the summer when demand is also the least. So there's a mismatch of demand and supply seasonally, and that's very important for hydrogen. There is a pretty decent growth in electricity in Georgia over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been in the range of 5 to 6% electricity growth. That's much higher than is experienced in Europe and in the United States and in all developed economies, because the electricity price in fully developed economies usually is higher, number one, usually is more efficient, and the structure of demand usually changes as an economy matures from agriculture and industry to less electricity intensive industries such as IT and services. And also I would note that the Bitcoin price is $18,000 per solution. So that's a great healthy growth in demand price, even during COVID. So we've had a somewhat of a attenuation of demand growth in Georgia because of COVID this past year, but not that much, only about 7%. In Georgia, there was a robust market for power export that was considered for many years, but that the growth in demand in Georgia has made the possibility of export to be less. And there's a lot of gas that's going through Georgia. 16 billion cubic meters per year is going through Georgia on the South Caucasus pipeline, and we're only using 2.5 billion cubic meters per year. So there's a huge amount of gas going through Georgia and relatively not that much being used here. And I would say that power and gas prices are both subsidized to some extent. So we don't have the full cost of service pricing that we really would need to in terms of having the market be informing supply and demand, but we're moving in that direction. The main achievement that Georgia had in the last couple of years in terms of its electricity reform was passage of the new energy law at the very end of 2019. And that forms the basis for a competitive power market that is projected to go live in July 2021. So let me now show you a little bit about how energy is used in Georgia. So there is, right now in the winter, there's a deficit of supply so that we're importing more and more electricity increasingly over the last, steadily over the last 5 years, the amount of imports has grown. And the amount of local generation has grown, but not as much and not so much as is needed. So you can see that the thermal plants I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but in the winter months, thermal plants and imports are making up the deficit between supply and demand. And use of hydrogen can help smooth out that, that supply-demand imbalance. That's one use of hydrogen. Second use of hydrogen is this pipeline here, Trans-Anatolian pipeline, which connects to the Trans-Adriatic pipeline that Alexander mentioned. And putting hydrogen into that gas pipeline was something that to me seemed like a natural thing to do. We have a lot of excess electricity production in the summer from hydro. And I thought, well, you've got this giant gas pipeline, why not put that into the pipeline and you can then serve the European market. Finally, we have this, in this little sort of diagram and map on the lower right-hand corner, we have a planned gas storage facility which has financing originating with the KfW and is a planned project that would put a big gas storage facility that providing about 3 or 4 months of gas storage right near Tbilisi, and would help lower the energy supply risk for Georgia. So these goals of using hydrogen is serving the winter demand, serving Europe, monetizing junk electricity. I call it junk electricity. I'm going to show you on the next slide what I mean by junk electricity, improving energy security, and finally, and this gets to something that Yorgo opened the presentation with, the election result. And I'll admit that I cried with joy at the election result, and I was extra happy that John Kerry was named as climate ambassador. Probably US is going back into the Paris Climate Accord and other multilateral approaches. I think that we can look at global climate change now in workshops and webinars like this, where we're coming together, sharing ideas and looking for common solutions. But the final reason to do hydrogen is green tourism, green agriculture, and international business. For example, companies that are looking to locate in places that have a low carbon footprint, companies like Google, eBay, Amazon, where they want to locate their IT and data servers in places that have a low carbon footprint, they want to see this kind of green hydrogen program. So here's showing you the seasonal nature of gas demand, which is low in the summer and high in the winter. And we looked at what if we put in 200 megawatts of wind power, which is the amount of wind power that's actually under development and close to financial closure here in Georgia. And we use that for hydrogen production. And could we blend that into the natural gas system? And the answer in our feasibility study was yes, we probably could. And then we could fill in the winter demand with hydrogen, and then we could export the remaining demand in the summer. And I would note that there's a duck curve. It's the California duck curve that's now showing up all over the world, where you have a high electricity demand in the summer and you have a lot more solar in the summer. So you have these demand supply curves that are looking very non-traditional that are coming along. Here's my depiction of junk electricity. This is a calculation that we got from the Georgian Energy Development Fund, where they said, they evaluated how much electricity could be made with water that is spilled during the summer and cannot be used to either supply electricity demand locally or to export. And the total amount of electricity is 956 million kilowatt hours, which represents almost 10% of Georgia's demand. And that electricity, it's spilled electricity, which means it has a price of zero. And can we talk about zero electricity price? Yes, we can. We see zero electricity price in Germany, in Texas, in California. So having a price of zero and having a price where you get paid to decrement your electricity usage means that hydrogen can be a source of free electricity, or even to get paid to use electricity. Here is a depiction of the usages of Alexander, Alexander foreshadowed this in terms of the supply chain from green electricity to demand. I think I'll leave this as homework for when these slides are distributed, rather than going through each side of it. But basically, we can make the electricity with hydro, excess hydro, wind and solar. We can store that in the gas storage. We can use that. It was mentioned ammonia. It was mentioned industrial usage for pure hydrogen. I will be honest and say that the price of hydrogen, that the value for hydrogen is highest when you use it for specialized industrial usage, when you're using pure hydrogen. As a fuel for the BTUs in hydrogen, it doesn't have as much value because you are looking at it vis-a-vis natural gas. So let's let's begin to look at the economics of a real project. And first question is, where does the electrolyzer come from? And you see a lot of projects that are on the drawing board or in development where the supplier is either ITM or Nel or Hydrogenics. And those are very different companies. To make an analogy from the wind industry, if you're going to be, well, if we're going to talk about 6 gigawatts, we have to talk about project financing. If we're going to talk about project financing, we have to talk about warranties, and then we have to talk about balance sheet. And so we looked first at the revenues and assets of these hydrogen producers, because I wanted to make sure that there was a financeability of these hydrogen electrolyzer suppliers. And just looking at the scale, you see there's a very wide range of sizes of companies, and some I think are financeable on a project finance basis, and some I think are going to need some support. And here there's some possibilities for multilateral institutions to provide, for example, some warranties that can help give us the financing support needed to achieve project financing. And then we looked at the economics of you know, what production do you get and what are the prices. And I'll expect some questions about the price of electrolyzer, but the main types of electrolyzer technologies are alkaline and PEM. Now we're at the frontier of my technical knowledge, so I'm not going to go into this, but we're looking at, our analysis showed that the system prices is ranging from around $700 per kilowatt for installed cost of the electrolyzer to up to $2,000. And you're going to get in trouble if you have to pay as much as $2,000 per electrolyzer. There are projections for how much these electrolyzers are going to cost. Here's a projection from IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Association. And you can see that they're projecting the current electrolyzer price of $840 USD per kilowatt down to $200 USD per kilowatt in 2050. And I don't see any reason why electrolyzers won't follow the same cost curve as solar and wind, which we've all experienced such a dramatic reduction in cost over the last 20 years. And here's our base case analysis. Our base case analysis is that if we get 500 megawatt hours of electricity at a 1 cent price. Now remember that Georgia, our analysis, we had double this amount of electricity for free. So 1 cent sounds like an extraordinarily low price, but really it's possible. And I will also mention another data point. In Portugal, there was a recent solar competition for acquiring 1 gigawatt of solar capacity. And the price achieved was 1.3 euro cents, which is a 2020 price achievement. So these prices are really, I think, quite achievable from renewables. We assumed a zero carbon price here, and we assume if we install 100 megawatts of electrolyzer and we use that 57% of the time, which is a fairly, you know, when you get into these numbers, you'll see that how much you use the electrolyzer is a key factor in the economics. And how much does the electrolyzer cost? You know, maybe we were a little aggressive on this electrolyzer price, but we had a major engineering company who was our partner in this analysis, and they told us that we could use $700 per kilowatt if we're using a 2023 installed cost for electrolyzer. And what price did we get for the hydrogen cost? And the way that I expressed the hydrogen cost was in the equivalent of natural gas. So I looked at how many dollars per 1,000 cubic meters if you were selling this as heat, as natural gas? And the answer was $233 per 1,000 cubic meters, which is a decent price in the European framework. I'll go quickly because I don't want to take away from, I don't want to trespass on David Managadze's time. So what happens if the electrolyzer costs more? Well, if your electrolyzer costs more, it's a linear relationship. Your gas is going to cost more. That's, I think, kind of intuitive. If the price of electricity gets higher, now here, this is quite sensitive. So if we get into these prices of 3 or 4 cents per kilowatt hour, we'll be at a US dollar figure up into the $1,000 per 1,000 cubic meters. And I think we can agree that's not going to be workable unless we get a significant carbon price. And here is also an interesting, people talk about, well, we can use the electricity as a balancer for marginal amounts of electricity. And here, and I think I've seen some other studies that show you that you want to be, this sweet spot is in the 40 to 50% capacity factor. Capacity factor of the electrolyzer is what percentage of time is the electrolyzer running. So, you get the best economics if you run it 100% of the time, but that's going to be, you're going to have to acquire a lot of electricity to do that. Whereas if you're using the electrolyzer only 20% of the time, now your cost of electricity is low, but your capital cost of the electrolyzer is amortized over fewer kilowatt hours. And carbon price, we need a carbon price. Maybe John Kerry can get us a carbon price. Our base case was 0 here. So to the extent that you get a better carbon price, you can get down into this into the mid hundreds dollars per 1,000 cubic meters. There you're in great shape. So what are the next steps that we recommended? We recommended more feasibility research. I think we're very aligned with the EU hydrogen organization that Yorgo was talking about. And I hope that Georgia can align with this so that we get more feasibility study into storing gas, in transporting gas, and using gas on hydrogen on site. Secondly, I think we need a pilot project. We need to get some feeling. There was a very successful 20 megawatt wind pilot project that was installed by the government, by the Georgian Energy Development Fund in Georgia. It achieved a greater than 50% capacity factor. It's a very successful pilot project, and I think we need about the same range of pilot project for hydrogen. And Georgia, I think, should adopt an hydrogen strategy. I think we need to make a trip over to Ukraine, Alexander, and see what you've done there and achieve, capitalize on the lessons learned. And finally, regulation, because we're anticipating that the gas networks and the, having this competitive market, there's going to be a market price for ancillary services, for storage. And so to get that price and to have the regulatory framework established so that the price of hydrogen is, so that we get a price and we can then have revenue streams and then we can have project financing, I think is the goal of this whole thing. So thank you very much. I'm delighted that this webinar is happening. Look forward to your questions. And now I can pass it on to David.
Many thanks, Daniel. Many thanks, Dan. That was really fantastic. You show that you have many, many years of experience in that field. Rule of thumb is 80% of the price of hydrogen is made up by the electricity price, and only 20% by the electrolyzer. You showed that in your slides. So that's why Ukraine and Georgia are really excellent locations to go for renewable hydrogen. And let's continue to see how this has been seen by international institutions like the EBRD. And we have David Managadze. The name shows a Georgian origin. So he's the associate director and the regional head in the Caucasus region for energy in Eurasia. David, you have the floor.
Yorgo, thanks a lot. First of all, I want to thank all presenters and organizers of this webinar because it is very becoming hydrogen, and especially green hydrogen is becoming very hot topic and very interesting. And just as short as 12 months ago, I've heard and knew nothing about hydrogen and green hydrogen. But now we are all sort of trying to get more knowledge and more information about the subject. And these presentations that I've heard today were very interesting and informative. Next slide, please. So I will talk briefly about the bank, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Then about the global and regional outlook for green hydrogen and the role of EBRD in the short-term future, because as what I will try to show throughout the presentation is that future is changing so fast that it is very difficult to make predictions even for the short-term future. Next slide, please. So the bank was established in 1991 by 61 countries and with capital base of 30 billion. And it's AAA rated institution. You can see that majority of the shareholders is US 5 countries, USA, UK, EU countries, and then EU 27 countries, and that shows that decision making within the bank is sort of driven by these main shareholders. Next slide, please. This just shows about what the bank achieved throughout throughout its existence. On average, we are financing 10 billion projects per year, and majority of them are private sector projects that are supporting development of private sector in our countries of operation. Next slide, please. The bank rests the key, let's say there are 3 key pillars for the bank, and this slide, one of them is sound banking, what is self-explanatory. Another one, additionality. Additionality means that bank is not competing with existing financiers, and if the project can be financed by the local banks or commercial banks, international commercial banks, then EBRD is usually not involved, and we are financing projects that no one is financing otherwise. And the project that Dan mentioned, pilot 20 megawatt wind project in Georgia with more than 50% load factor, that even we at EBRD didn't believe that it was possible to achieve. This was financed by the bank, and we mobilized bill lenders or private sources of private financiers into this project. And the third pillar is transition impact. And the transition impact is something that we are sort of looking into in all projects to have at least 2 out of the 6 qualities presented here. It should be integrated, competitive, resilient, well-governed, green, and inclusive. And the green transition quality is becoming more and more important and mainstream in the activities of the bank, and especially in activities of the part of the bank that I represent, Sustainable Infrastructure Group, and we are one of the teams within the Sustainable Infrastructure Group, Energy Eurasia. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what is going on in the world now with the hydrogen? Green hydrogen made from electrolyzing water using renewable electricity is the world's best hope for a clean fuel to back up intermittent renewable energy drawn from the sun, wind, and the water. And behind the growing, there is a belief that it can help meet the goal of net zero emission by 2050, needed to hold global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And the race is on to produce more and more of it, and it is, and the race is going worldwide. In July, Plans were unveiled to build a 5 billion green hydrogen plant in Saudi Arabia, producing 650 tons of green hydrogen a day, enough to run around 20,000 hydrogen-fueled buses. And production is expected to start in 2025. Hydrogen is planned to be transported to global markets as ammonia and then converted at its destination. German is ThyssenKrupp, which will supply the electrolyzers for the Saudi Arabia factory, is scaling up its manufacturing capacity, so as other producers of electrolyzers worldwide. A lot of energy giants like ENGIE are exploring the opportunity of repurposing oil and gas platforms near offshore wind farms to produce green hydrogen at sea. A lot of industrial players are accelerating their investments into green hydrogen production and use. Next slide, please. So this slide shows demand and supply outlook in Paris-aligned scenario, and it shows that approximately 20-25% of total final energy demand by 2050 is expected to be met by green hydrogen, and then the sectors of the economy that will be, let's say, using this green hydrogen to satisfy its demand. And on the right side of the slide, you see the sources of the hydrogen, and it can mainly come from three sources, with low carbon and renewable hydrogen being the key sources that will supply source of supply in the long term. Next slide, please. This slide is just showing evolution of demand and which, let's say, industry, which sectors of economy are expected to be the users of the green hydrogen or electricity generated from green hydrogen. Next slide, please. Here are key technologies, and as I mentioned earlier, there are three key main, let's say, sources. It's black, gray, or blue hydrogen. Most hydrogen used in industry today is made from fossil fuels and needs expensive carbon capture technology or other emerging solutions to help mitigate rather than worsen climate change. For now, even that hydrogen costs more than natural gas. Green hydrogen is expensive too, but there is a belief that it will follow the same pattern as solar and wind powered energy in the past 15-20 years, and it will become very cost competitive. And as a confirmation of this, just 2 days ago, there was an article on FT disclosing information that consortium of energy companies has joined the forces in an effort to drive the cost of so-called green hydrogen below $2 per kilogram, the price at which they estimate the eco-friendly inert gas will become an attractive alternative to fossil fuels. This consortium of companies is planning to develop 25 gigawatt of capacity to produce green hydrogen by 2026, what is substantially more than the EU strategy is outlined in EU strategy. As it stands, green hydrogen typically today costs anywhere, as estimated by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the cost typically for green hydrogen today is between $3.5 and $8 per kilogram of green hydrogen. For green hydrogen to compete with natural gas and coal, it will need to fall even further to $1 per kilogram. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just, I think it was mentioned already, but I will briefly say that the EU, in early July, EU put scaling up of renewable hydrogen in the center of Europe's climate ambition, announcing plans to produce up to 1 million tons of gas through its facilities to be built in the next 4 years. But as as mentioned on the previous slide, it seems that this information or these plans might materialize earlier than expected. Next slide, please. Yes, this slide is just shows that it will take some time for hydrogen economy to develop in our countries, in EBRD countries of operation. That market development will require a demand side development on the demand side in order for the market for the production to be developing. And I think it coincides very well with what Daniel mentioned in relation to Georgia, the main components and main elements required to make the green hydrogen mainstream. Next slide, please. In EBRD, we have the Green Economy Transition, or in acronym it is called the GET initiative. With GET initiative, the bank aims at promoting sustainable resource efficiency and innovation in 3 areas vital for countries where the EBRD invests. This is energy, water, and materials. The rapid growth in demand for resources, volatile price, and growing environmental concerns, including those about the impact of climate change, has made resource efficiency a priority for all countries and for countries where the bank operates as well. In this context, hydrogen is getting increasing attention as one of the decarbonized fuels of the future, which can significantly contribute to the energy transition of a range of energy and carbon-intensive sectors, whilst unlocking additional benefits from renewable power generation. Next slide, please. What we are planning to do in Georgia. First of all, we were very delighted and surprised at the same time to receive a request from the Georgian authorities to support them in looking into what can be done, what Georgia can do with green hydrogen, and how it can be produced and how it can be utilized within the country and outside of the country. And Georgia is very well placed because, as Dan already mentioned, it is abundant of hydro resources that make approximately 75-40% of the 75 to 80% of the domestic needs. And as mentioned in the previous presentation, the water is even being spilled at the time when it is not used. In the first of its kind assignment, we will try to identify and quantify the investment requirements in the country to generate green hydrogen, as well as to update Georgia's gas network to transport of blended hydrogen to end users. Provided the technical aspects and the economics work, the project is expected to become a regional milestone in exploring synergies between decarbonized fuel production and existing transportation infrastructure, and could support Georgia to become a regional green hydrogen hub. But of course, at this stage, Georgia is very far from where Ukraine is with its development, and it will require to make a lot of efforts and a lot of time in order to get up to speed with Ukraine, and then maybe together with Ukraine, we can, let's say, Georgia can explore or monetize the benefits of green hydrogen. Thank you. This is very briefly what I wanted to say, and happy to answer the questions.
Many thanks, David. Very impressive. And also impressive to see that you were able in a very short time to come back to the government of Georgia and to answer their request. And congratulations also to be so fast. Alexander, you want to say something? You want to answer some questions that you saw already?
Yeah, Jorgo, thank you very much. I even want now to advise or propose David maybe to raise the question to sign a memorandum for cooperation and understanding on a field of hydrogen, and I can even think manage it from the side of Ministry of Energy of Ukraine or from our non-governmental organization.
Alexander, it will be my pleasure to support this thing materializing and happening, and let's keep in touch. And we are ready. We as EBRD, I'm now talking on behalf of EBRD, and I'm personally ready to support whatever is required to make things progressing on the ground. So just let me know what needs to be done.
I mean, in both cases,
okay.
Ukraine and Georgia, we have already seen that some pipelines could play a quite decisive role. The Trans-Anatolian, or which is later on the same Trans-Adriatic pipeline that brings, so to say, hydrogen from Georgia or from Ukraine via Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece to Italy in order to serve then the Central European markets, which will for quite some time be one of the most important marketplaces where the hydrogen will be sold, because there you have industry needing the feedstock, you have of course the mobility sector needing hydrogen as a fuel, and you have hydrogen as an energy vector to store and to be repowered, but also to be used as an energy vector. Now, some of the questions in the chat box have already, or the F&A have already been answered. I have two questions that would go to, sorry, to Dan. That's one question by Jose, who asks, what are the key pillars that Georgia ought to stand on so that technology norms related issues do not undermine a promising hydrogen Georgian market? I think you had a slide where you showed the different phases. And second question is quite related from Emre. You mentioned the low price of electricity in Georgia and Ukraine as one of the key reasons why hydrogen production makes sense. And that's true. But this is fossil fuel powered electricity, which does not make sense thermodynamically. What is the point of gray hydrogen, and how does it plan to scale green in the high cost of capital? Maybe this question goes to both to Dan and David. Dan, do you want to have a start?
Yeah, I can address the price of electricity and the source of electricity, because in Georgia, the figures that I've most recently seen is that 85% of the electricity in Georgia is coming from hydroelectricity. So a huge amount of the energy in Georgia is based on hydro, and the remaining 25% is imports, and which is fossil fuel, gas fired. So it is true that if the electricity was based on fossil fuel, then that thermodynamically wouldn't make sense. And by the way, if you use the hydrogen we've seen some projects where they're taking hydrogen and running it through a gas turbine, which is not one of the better uses for hydrogen, because those MBTUs are relatively expensive to produce. But if you store it, or if you use it in specialized industry applications and transport, very interesting to look at transport. And if we can look at because electric vehicles are good for small vehicles, but they're not so good for trucks and heavy, transport of goods. So if we can get to liquefied hydrogen like we do for LNG for trucks and trains, that's very interesting.
That's one of the reasons why we are so happy to cooperate with Iveco, one of our members, because in Italy you have a lot of CNG, LNG trucks, at the fueling stations. And basically this is a step towards a hydrogen reality one day. And we can see how in Italy they are really working on exactly that plan with hydrogen that comes from Georgia and Ukraine via the TAP, this Trans-Adriatic pipeline, as we have heard. David, you want to add?
Yes, and maybe just to add that electricity, just want to underline what Dan said, that majority of electricity, 80-85% is produced from renewable sources, and also in Dan's presentation. And this is why hydrogen production in Georgia is not intended to be, let's say, gray or let's say whatever. It will be green hydrogen, and this is the whole focus, and this is the focus of authorities, and this is the focus of the bank. It will be green hydrogen. In the last 10 years, we financed, the bank, EBRD financed approximately 500 megawatt of renewable capacity in this country. And this capacity, plus the existing renewable capacity from where the sometimes water are being spilled, what also were shown and quantified in Dan's presentation very well. These are very good sources and to show how the production green hydrogen can be produced. But this is when we are talking about this is already, it is past, because future already, as mentioned in my presentation just a couple of days ago, a consortium of many big European, international, not only European, but it's a consortium of international players from Australia, from Europe, from US. They are planning to produce 26 gigawatt of renewable capacity for production of green hydrogen, and they aim to achieve cost of $2 per kilogram of produced hydrogen, what is remarkable. And this will make hydrogen competitive with diesel. This is the stage when it will be competitive with diesel fuel, and it is something that just 3 months ago everyone was saying that it will take at least a decade to get to this level, and we see that this decade, the plan is now to produce it within coming 5-6 years. So things are changing very fast and very quickly in today's world.
Thank you, David. I think you're absolutely right, and it's remarkable that IRENA, that was mentioned by Dan in his presentation, so the International Renewable Energy Agency, came up 2 weeks ago with a figure of the electrolyzer capacity that they see in 10 years. It's 270 gigawatt, 270. So we were quite courageous beginning of this year with the 2 times 40, we thought. I remember very well 3 years ago at the, I think, COP 25 in Bonn, I really started the talks to IRENA about hydrogen, and they were quite reluctant. So things are changing dramatically, which is very fine. There is a question that is there. I throw it to you. What are Georgia and Ukraine's strategies with respect to electrification of the energy system? Electrifying heat and light transport are quicker routes to decarbonization than hydrogen. They require less incremental renewable capacity because of smaller efficiency losses. But before I give you the floor, I have to say that, of course, this is an old question that we have to deal with as Hydrogen Europe for a long time. We have competitors here in Brussels. One competitor is called Euroelectric. So these are the guys who are running electricity, and they have the vision of electrifying 90% of the energy system. I don't know whether you believe in God or not, but some people do. Others say nature does not allow that. So you cannot break nature's rules and nature's laws. You can go up to 60. That's already massive, and that requires a lot of rare earths, copper, and these are elements that are scarce. So it's elements that are not abundantly available like hydrogen is. So that's one part of the question, one part of the answer. Another part is, of course, that we need to build up a second or the other leg of the energy system. Electricity is undoubtedly the first, but hydrogen will be the other leg, and you need two legs in order to walk. And only that allows you to replace in bulk coal in the steel production or in powering, oil as a fuel, or natural gas in most of the pipelines. And don't forget that gray hydrogen needs also to be replaced. And I was very happy that David mentioned also pyrolysis, because pyrolysis, to be crystal clear, can also be done with renewable energy. The heat that you need in order to split methane, so CH4, into hydrogen and carbon black or carbon solid, not emitting. This heat is 4 times less to 5 times less energy than you need in electrolysis, because methane is a loose combination, whereas water is quite strong, like CO2 is. So you need 4 to 5 times more energy. Pyrolysis is a cheap way to produce hydrogen, but it's 10 years behind when it comes to maturity of technology. So let's go in bulk with electrolysis, and let's then later on tackle also pyrolysis, which leads to clean hydrogen and even much cheaper. And that's a very important aspect. Now, is anybody wanting to answer this Georgian-Ukrainian electricity hydrogen battle? Alexander? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think it will be, I think, for hydrogen, and I think it will be very soon. Jorgo, I want to also add one more way how we can get hydrogen. It's from the Earth deposit, as I give you information before.
Why?
And in Ukraine, we have some deposits. When we make an analysis of gas in this deposit, we find out that 27% it's hydrogen. And now we are thinking about how we can split it and make it useful for us. And I think it will be even more cheaper than pyrolysis, because it just goes out and we need to separate. So I think that our strategy now, one question was about our strategy, and we need to follow up and to relook on our energy strategy and our determined, national determined contribution according to Paris Agreement. So there is no any technology as hydrogen which can allows us to decarbonize, make a decarbonization of transport and economic sector of Ukraine industry, chemical or metallurgical. So this is a strong argument for hydrogen, and I think as the cleverest and as a smart and quick decision, hydrogen will be.
Many thanks. Dan, you want to give an answer to that question?
Yes, I would say that too much electrification is really hard to manage. I mean, we look at the grid operator who's trying to deal with variability of wind and solar, and they have a big problem when, you know, a cloud comes over or there's a gust of wind, or the forecasting isn't as accurate as you need it. Now, there's a lot of great advances made in forecasting, but when you're trying to manage that grid system, it's very complicated and it's prone to miscalculation. In fact, we just saw it in California recently. There was a blackout because the grid operator mistakenly told a 400 megawatt plant to go offline, and they had meant to tell it to go online. So even in a market like California, with the California Independent System Operator, you can have a mistake like that. But with the gas system, you have line pack, you have so much more time, and it's so much easier to manage. I would add that this pipeline going through Georgia and connecting to Europe already exists. There's a potential project in Georgia to link Georgia and Romania with an undersea high voltage cable. And it's a possibility. We helped the Georgian state electric system look at the feasibility of that. Now that's still under consideration. It's possible, but to have the gas pipeline system is already built. It's already built in Ukraine as well. And well, I like to make use of assets that already exist because it's a sunk cost that you don't have to recapitalize.
Maybe David?
Yes, and maybe with my non-technical background, no one here said that electrifying heat or light transport is something that should not be done. But it doesn't mean that green hydrogen should not be explored. These two can go in parallel, and all efforts should be, let's say, done in order to mitigate the climate change. Therefore, it's not that you have to choose between one or the other. And another thing is that in order to electrify things, you need electricity. This electricity should come from somewhere. It is not that it is coming from nowhere. And I think here one of the things is that what will be the sources of this electricity. So we think that it should be renewable, coming from renewable sources, and these renewable sources will be used in the best possible way. And if there is what just Dan mentioned about the forecasting, nobody can forecast accurately. And when you have a possibility to generate, but there is no demand, you should do something with this renewable source rather than burning natural gas. So I think at the end of the day, this is what needs to be done, and everything should go in parallel. It's not that one thing will prevail over the other.
Yes, Inessa, Jens, I think we need to come to a close because our time has we are over time already. I think maybe with this I would like to shortly answer also the three remaining questions, which are about other very good forms of producing hydrogen from biomethane steam reforming, which is also considered as green hydrogen, biomethane steam reforming, or the integration of wave tidal energy offshore locations, and of the question that is here mentioned, electrolysis requires a lot of water. So we have to have a relevant facility treating water, for example, and that should be built. This is all true, and that's why we talk about system efficiency. So it's very important to talk about the single technology efficiency. Of course, electricity has a higher efficiency than hydrogen if you do the repowering. That's true. But if you have no other possibility to go zero emission, you rather would choose that option because there is the endlessness of renewables. It's endless. It's not like fossil fuel that are ending. You can produce all the time. And thus, some energy losses are less important than an inefficiency of the whole system. And that's why we need to create the water supply. We do. By the way, we will have a big problem when it comes to coastal regions with salt, not with water, but with salt. What do we do with a desalinated water is clear, but with the salt we have, we need to then bring it back to water in a very balanced way. So these are things we are calculating already. We are working with that. And so the overall efficiency will lead us to come back again together in this round, possibly, because I think that was just a starting point. Excellent to listen to you and to see the developments around the Black Sea that are happening with the help of Dan, who comes with his experience, and USAID and the EBRD, and of course the Hydrogen Council, which is one of the most successful national associations, I have to say, that we have among the more than 240 members of Hydrogen Europe. So congratulations. Thanks very much. Thanks to the audience. And with this, I would like to give back to Inessa.
Thank you so much, Yorga, and thank you so much to our speakers, Dan, David, Alexander. Thanks a lot for very interesting, well-structured presentations. Thanks to all our participants. We will make all the presentations available to you within 24 hours. And as we covered Georgia today, I'm just excited to let you know that we are soon launching a Georgia profile at Enerloop. Enerloop is our digital tool which enables companies to access comprehensive and up-to-date power industry data and analysis. It's useful for all the companies representing the whole value chain in the energy market, private developers, EPC companies, engineering firms, law firms, technology suppliers. So Georgia's profile is coming very soon, and we also hope to have a Ukrainian profile in 2021. Thanks a lot. I will make the link to Enerloop available to all of you after this webinar. Please check it out and request demo if you're interested. Thanks again for this interesting talk, and stay tuned, stay healthy and safe. See you next time. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.